get to the big three.
Number 3.
The president obviously is recognizing this as going forward, and knowing we could be in a much better place if Biden hadn't held back, one, the weapons themselves initially, and then two, how to use those weapons.
And by the way, Jack Keane said that in real time 3 years ago. We are going to talk about a setback with Russia. It means Trump is ready to step up, I hope, for Ukraine. We bring you the latest.
Number 2.
They better look out. I sent 32 letters to mayors, multiple letters to these governors. They say that we're trying to tell them how to do their jobs. Yeah, we're trying to tell them to keep up.
Well, let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
The president obviously is recognizing this as going forward, and knowing we could be in a much better place if Biden hadn't held back, one, the weapons themselves initially, and then two, how to use those weapons.
And by the way, Jack Keane said that in real time 3 years ago. We are going to talk about a setback with Russia. It means Trump is ready to step up, I hope, for Ukraine. We bring you the latest.
Number 2.
They better look out. I sent 32 letters to mayors, multiple letters to these governors. They say that we're trying to tell them how to do their jobs. Yeah, we're trying to tell them to keep America safe, and they need to keep America safe.
And that's why the president calls her the best attorney general ever. The border shutdown, illegal immigrant crackdown has proved Donald Trump is delivering. But now it's time, in my view, to accelerate for the process for people doing it the right way, green card holders, people on waiting in line the proper way, and even Democrats might buy in on that, let alone helping out hospitality, meat packers, and farmers.
Number 1.
One of the things we're going to be redoing is your parks. I'm very good at grass because I have a lot of golf courses all over the place. I know more about grass than any human being, I think, anywhere in the world.
Good.
We're going to be regrassing all of your parks.
Yes, especially the one across the street from the White House. It's an embarrassment. Andrew Jackson sits there alone around dirt. D.C. crackdown beautification push is off to a smashing success. Why we should all hope this show comes to a city near you. But Shannon, I just saw Shannon Bream, great to see you from Fox News Sunday. I just saw a poll that says 91% of Washington, D.C. residents don't want. Well, let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
The president obviously is recognizing this as going forward, and knowing we could be in a much better place if Biden hadn't held back, one, the weapons themselves initially, and then two, how to use those weapons.
And by the way, Jack Keane said that in real time 3 years ago. We are going to talk about a setback with Russia. It means Trump is ready to step up, I hope, for Ukraine. We bring you the latest.
Number 2.
They better look out. I sent 32 letters to mayors, multiple letters to these governors. They say that we're trying to tell them how to do their jobs. Yeah, we're trying to tell them to keep America safe, and they need to keep America safe.
And that's why the president calls her the best attorney general ever. The border shutdown, illegal immigrant crackdown has proved Donald Trump is delivering. But now it's time, in my view, to accelerate for the process for people doing it the right way, green card holders, people on waiting in line the proper way, and even Democrats might buy in on that, let alone helping out hospitality, meat packers, and farmers.
Number 1.
One of the things we're going to be redoing is your parks. I'm very good at grass because I have a lot of golf courses all over the place. I know more about grass than any human being, I think, anywhere in the world.
Good. We're
going to be regrassing all of your parks.
Yes, especially the one across the street from the White House. It's an embarrassment. Andrew Jackson sits there alone around dirt. D.C. crackdown beautification push is off to a smashing success. Why we should all hope this show comes to a city near you. But Shannon, I just saw Shannon Bream, great to see you from Fox News Sunday. I just saw a poll that says 91% of Washington, D.C. residents don't want the stepped-up presence of FBI officers and National Guard. What about you?
I would like to see the question. You know how the polling questions, it very much, the wording of the question matters, because I live and work in D.C. for the past 20 years.
And?
I do not hate seeing calm streets and a Union Station where I'm not being accosted as I'm trying to get to and from the train. I mean, for me, that's a positive. I know people don't like the looks, of course, of soldiers on the streets of American cities. You got to worry about the optics of that. I got to tell you, they're using them in a lot of tourist areas, at the metro or our subway, version of subway there in D.C. at their stations. And so there's, of course, going to be backlash. And I think that's just because it's a Republican president who is doing this. D.C. is very independent. It's a federal district, though, and there are portions of oversight that the White House and Congress get to do because it's not a city, it's federal district. But I see it as a net positive so far. I like feeling safer. And even the police chief there said us having more law enforcement on the streets is a positive.
See, I watched J.D. Vance yesterday, and he seems to think that the next stop could be Atlanta. And think about it. You have a friendly governor in Governor Kemp. You have an unfriendly mayor, but it's not a California situation where the mayor and governor are unfriendly. So that could be a crackdown. You can't tell me Atlanta couldn't use the bulking up. It's just a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. It is. And also National Guard, you need them available to respond to natural disasters and, serious situations of unrest and other things. So it's not sustainable forever and ever, but you've got multiple states who have sent their soldiers, their National Guardsmen and women to D.C. And yeah, if you start spreading them around the country, maybe it's a targeted source for like 3 to 6 months in a particular city and you move on. It seems clear to me the administration is testing this out in D.C. for possible franchises across the country.
My opinion, my plan. I would use this time, I'd get a stack table, card table.
Okay.
And I would make this a cop recruiting thing.
Oh.
So we'd be able to turn this over. What are you, 800 cops short of what you need?
Yeah.
So let's recruit. Let's fill up an academy class. So when the National Guard leaves, there'll be new, fresh troops coming in, officers coming in.
You're always thinking ahead.
I think so.
Are you thinking ahead that this could be like a side hustle for you, being a cop? If you could set your hours, like you have, you and Dean Cain out there, we would get you little capes, little outfits, little crime fighters.
Superhero background. I would need training.
Yeah, but he's hitting the ground, ready to go. Just as long as there's no kryptonite, he's good.
So among the skeptics that think it's a bad move, Matt Bennett, former advisor to Bill Clinton, now he's got his own consulting firm, which I hear could be lucrative. Cut 7.
On the other hand, this is probably not the best way of going about making Washington safer. As Mayor Bowser has made clear, she's 500 cops short. And one of the reasons for that is that there's about $1 billion missing from the D.C. budget that congressional Republicans just took away and for no reason at all and haven't given her.
Well, I'm sure there's a counter to that, but you've heard that they said it on your show last week, $1 billion got cut.
Yeah, and they're trying to work on that. It was something that I don't think was fully intentional, that there wasn't going to be some way to refund that part of D.C. Everybody's out of D.C. right now. You may have heard the August recess is underway. But there has been talk across the aisle that they wanted to make a fix to that budget issue.
So if they get the $1 billion, that'll certainly help. But the thing is, you need candidates. And if a 15-year-old carjacks you, you want to be able to prosecute him. You know the guys that beat up the big balls from Doge?
Already back out.
Yeah.
On the streets of D.C.
One is in their parents' custody, and the other one's in a shelter, but she's still going to school. And she's got has multiple offenses. So that's the problem.
Yeah.
But how do you change that?
Well, I think that you got to change some of the laws there in D.C. And of course, this is a discussion that now U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro is having down there saying, I can't go after kids. And there are some of these laws in D.C. that put people into that category if they're under 24. Listen, I know a lot of people who have been married, been in the military, gone to college, have kids, whatever, by 23. And we're going to treat them as juveniles in some sense for some of these crimes potentially in D.C. I mean, it seems a little bit ludicrous.
Right. A 23-year-old is not a minor. They could be fighting 5 years already in the Army.
Exactly.
All right. So let's talk about what that horrific story of the tractor-trailer driver, the illegal immigrant who can't read English, makes a real ridiculous 3-point turn, I guess, and killed 3 people. He's been extradited over to Port St. Lucie in Florida from California. Who gave him the license? California. Who's that company? Their license been suspended. They've stopped all immigrants from driving and getting new licenses until further notice, said Pam Bondi. Here is Governor Ron DeSantis. Cut 11.
We had a challenge to our the processing and deep.
There were 3 people killed by a guy who should have never been in our country, should have never gotten work authorization, and certainly should not have been issued 2 commercial driver's license.
So you get to be tough against illegals, but if other states aren't, it bleeds into your state.
Yeah, and if you think about CDL licenses, like you said, state of California, state of Washington, so that's 2 places that he passed muster enough somehow to get these licenses. You're driving a machine that is potentially, tons of material out on a street that could be very deadly in any situation. And if somebody can't even recognize the traffic signs, I don't know how they got through the process. I remember failing my first driver's license test at 15 years old, being devastated, but nobody was like, okay, here's your license, just go right ahead. I don't know how an adult who's driving this kind of commercial vehicle doesn't have to pass the most basic testing.
I still stay in touch with the person who gave me my driver's test.
Really?
We bonded in that 7 minutes.
But you probably passed on the first time.
I did.
I didn't.
Right. They said I was on the best. You didn't?
No, because this
You must
wasn't
have been
this wasn't the driving test. Oh my gosh! Yes,
then you got to go apply again.
In Florida, you go in for your first license at 15, which now to me is shocking that no 15-year-old needs to be driving a car. But at the time, I went for the written test, and I specifically remember one of the questions I failed was, if you pass an exit on the interstate, what's the best thing to do? And I said, back up and go back to the exit ramp.
Laugh out loud?
No, there was a big. You're not getting your license today.
Wow.
It's very sad.
It was the best thing that ever happened to America.
It was for safety's sake.
Bream was kept
See,
off the roads.
I failed. Certain people should fail their licensing exams until they can actually answer the questions correctly.
Who's on your show this week?
So Senator James Lankford is going to be with us. We're going to talk Russia, Ukraine. Is it time for the Senate to drop this sentence package that not only, it doesn't go after just Russia, it's their customers like India, Brazil, China. You got to get their attention somehow. It's not working so far. So will the Senate, they've been waiting for the cue from the president. But man, how often do you get 80 plus senators to agree on anything?
Nothing.
Like never. So they're ready to go. Is the president going to unleash them to do this package?
Here's General Jack. Oh, by the way, is that it?
What's that?
Is that it?
Well, I have somebody else that is overseas that we're trying to confirm, and we're working on logistics. But we're also going to have a legal panel. Turley Dupree are going to be with us for this raid this morning on John Bolton's house and all kinds of other legal issues. The big win by the president, the $500 million
You were telling me before the show that this Bolton had it coming.
Right. That's exactly what I said. People will believe we actually had that conversation. Don't say that.
No, okay.
No, but the president said he didn't know anything about it, and that should be the way that operates. So we'll talk about what comes next.
Right. So he can't wait till he'll get briefed later. Mm-hmm. So John Bolton, I mean, they don't get along, and he's a vicious commentator. I can't see him. He's the most responsible guy around, having documents that don't belong to him. So we'll see what happens on that. The other thing was when you were talking about Ukraine, it reminded me of how different things are now than Alaska. It seems the security guarantees, the big win for the West. Now they're walking it back. They're saying, we don't want international troops there. We don't want any troops there. We definitely don't want the U.S. there. Here's Jack Keane, cut 17.
Well, I think he made a general statement. I don't know what the language was used with Steve Witkoff. But I think he made a general statement to the president when he was with him, dealing with security guarantees being reasonable, something we should discuss. But I think anybody knowing Putin, when you get into the details of this, that's something else again. So listen, it's a negotiating item for sure, but we should put it on the table. What security guarantees Ukraine absolutely needs, and what the United States should be providing. As part of that multinational force, Ukraine.
I'm not going to tell you who to book, but he'd be a good one. Shannon, I'm just wondering if we could send somebody else in with Witkoff. I mean, do we have anybody else available? Because he's doing Hamas, he's doing Iran. That didn't go well.
He's busy.
Hamas, I'm still waiting for the peace agreement. And now we have a misinterpretation, deceptive, intentional or not, by the Russians on what exactly went on. You got to send a team in there.
Well, but listen, in Alaska, you had the president, you had Witkoff, you had Secretary Rubio. I mean, there were multiple people in there. But short of that, does President Trump think there's still any way to actually get this done with Putin? Because he's still bombing Ukraine. And you've got, Sergei Lavrov out there saying like, oh, we're not necessarily doing this meeting. There are many other steps that will have to happen before that happens. So again, it makes it look like Putin, plays footsie with President Trump, assures him he's going to move forward, and then what he moves forward on is more bombing.
But Trump has a threshold. I don't know if you heard, but he has a temper.
And yes, he does. And he's not happy with Putin and feeling like he's been strung along on this whole thing. So does he allow the sanctions to kick in? Does he start to play hardball with him in a consistent way?
Since the dossier isn't real, Putin can't have anything over on him. So I'm realizing that. So, and if it did turn out to be real, then he can blackmail him. But I do think that he's saying, okay, we're about done here. We could pack up at one point.
Well, and you've got Democrats who, there's one we're trying to finish booking for Sunday, but there are other Democrats out there saying, the president is getting played by Putin. He's been too easy on him. It's time to drop the hammer. It's time to use every potential lever that we have. And I do think President Trump does not like the idea that Putin is playing him or the optics of it looking like Putin's playing him. And I think that goes a long way in pushing his hand on the sanctions.
Senator Richard Blumenthal, cut 22.
It is absolutely mind-boggling that Donald Trump continues to be played, an American company hit, and Vladimir Putin has to know where his missiles and drones are going. So for all the bluster and banter, all the finger-pointing and rhetoric, Russia's position has barely budged. No ceasefire, no security guarantee, no one-on meeting with Zelensky.
Yeah.
And I think it's time for a reckoning, a reality check for Donald Trump.
Look, some of those things that is today, this hour, this changes by the minute. And what were they doing before? He's trying to shake the whole thing up and find out where people really stand. Soon, as Mark Thiessen writes, we're going to find out if Putin's ready to play ball because he's been isolated now. You know what Peggy Noonan writes? That I'll paraphrase, that Putin really freaked out, must have really freaked out seeing all the European leaders there on Monday. It's the exact opposite of what he tried to do. Is break up Europe, divide them who had no commitment to defense. Trump was coming in. He tended to be a divisive force in the first term with NATO, demanding they step up, demanding they get rid of Nord Stream 1 and 2. But it's had the opposite effect. He looked like a guy in charge. And I think he could have maybe stopped the process.
Yeah, and the leader of NATO calling Trump daddy. Like he's the one who's getting in there and whipping everyone into shape. So it's a very different relationship this time around than it was the last time. But you're right. I mean, Russia's complaint has been, we didn't want Ukraine to join NATO. We didn't want those extra forces around. And they have, by their own provocations, gotten to the place that they didn't want to be in the middle of this war that they started. So we'll see, though.
Lost Syria. Right? They have two more of their neighbors on their doorstep who are NATO members.
Yeah, they got new NATO members out of this.
So, Shannon, thanks so much for coming in.
What are you going to do this weekend?
I am doing Saturday night. I am going to On the Stage in Dallas, Texas.
Fun.
History, Liberty, and Laughs on live. Fox Nation is going to stream it.
What's the laughing part?
Me, Will Kane.
Oh, that will be fun.
Yeah, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. It'll be fun. So if you're staying in tonight, if it's going to be date night, why not date watching the stream
Fox Nation.
On Fox Nation?
Okay.
And then to get ready for One Nation Sunday at 10, amongst my guests, Alex Stubb, President of Finland, and Senator Lindsey Graham, who's not President of Finland.
Currently.
Right.
But anything's possible in 2025. You just don't know. We'll see what his current title is by Sunday night when you have him on.
And it's going to be fun. That's what I promise.
But you always promise me there's going to be a dance segment at some point. I'm still waiting for that.
Out of time.
Yeah, manage it. I don't know how that happens. We've got to get you a new line producer who can, get these segments timed out so that we don't lose the dancing segment every time.
Have money for the stopwatch. So they'll say in my ear.
What if I got you one?
What? Well, it'll come out of your budget. That's a network budget.
Amazon.com.
All right.
Send it over. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye, Shannon.
Bye.
Our president has repeatedly said that he is ready to meet, including with Mr. Zelensky, with the understanding that all issues that require consideration at the highest level will be well worked out.
So that is a spokesperson for the foreign minister who said they were looking to do a trilateral, my interpretation, but the things that have to be worked out are almost all a bridge too far. Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery joins us now, Senior Director of the Center on Cyber and Technology Innovation for the Freedom of Defense of Democracies. Admiral, your thoughts about some of the new revelations and demands the Russians are rolling out. Have we not been listening to them, or did they changing what they've been saying about security guarantees? Because now they say, we're not for international troops in Ukraine.
Honestly, Brian, first, thanks for having me. I will tell you, I think I don't like the Russians, but I think they've been consistent. I don't think they've ever, acknowledged that they would accept European forces, particularly forces from countries that belong to NATO, to be part of a reassurance force. And of course,
I thought that came out of it. Security guarantees, they were open to troops. I thought they made that clear to Witkoff last week and then after Alaska, no?
I think what they made clear to Witkoff and what Witkoff heard are probably two different things. And I'm not blaming Witkoff for that. But to me, that's probably the original sin, is that the conversations between Witkoff and the Russians were misunderstood. But I'll also tell you, when the Russians talk about security guarantees, they include themselves guaranteeing the security of Ukraine, which I think we all understand is
farcical.
Yes, exactly.
So they say no NATO membership, no Western troops on soil, surrender of the entire Donbass region. That was delivered to them. That's what they're looking for. And once that's worked out, then they'll have a meeting. They want to freeze the front lines, keep everything where it stands in Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia, which means they keep the nuclear plant, and relinquish some territory it is captured in Kharkiv, Sumy, and another long, unpronounceable city there. They also want areas they haven't captured. And they were never going to capture it. They said it was going to take another couple of years if they wanted to. That is full of rare earth and iron and other rich materials.
That's right. So I think what we could say is the Russians are for peace in principle, but not in practice. In other words, when you try to drill down the details with them, their demands are such that Ukraine would be a puppet state of Russia, and certainly at Russia's will. Russia could take what they want at their will. If they give up their fortifications in Donetsk region, I mean, they're going to look like Poland in 1939, just a quick trot across towards Kiev for the Russian army. So I really think this is these are unacceptable conditions, and the president is going to have to influence President Putin to think properly, and the only way to do that is through a pressure campaign.
And pressure meaning, what would that pressure campaign look like, Admiral?
I've advocated for three things. One is what you hear a lot about, which is sanctions that limit, about 40% of Russian GDP is driven by fossil fuel sales. So if we can drive that down through the sanctions on Chinese and Indian companies that are taking shadow fleet fuel, will drive down their federal budget. Their federal budget is 40% on fighting the war, 60% paying babushka, paying their base, which a lot of countries do. We pay our base too. But he'll have tough choices then. His base is critical to him, and fighting the war is critical to him. He'll have to pick one of them. Then the second and third things are defensive weapons, which you heard a lot about, Patriots and AMRAAMs, which the president is already starting to do. And then the third thing is offensive weapons. That's ATACMS. I would provide them. We have several thousand ATACMS left. We're moving on to a new weapon system called precision strike missiles. So let the Army push their ATACMS 1 and Block 1A to the Ukrainians, and have the Europeans pay us back in money that the U.S. Army can buy precision strike missiles for. So everyone wins, and Russia's pressurized.
Well, number one, shadow fleet. By definition, they're tough to find. Can we track them? Do we know where these ships are?
We know enough to we know where they're going. So you're right. When they're at sea, they're a little harder. I mean, we can find them at sea if we wanted to, but that's putting a lot of satellite effort against it. But in reality, they're going to only a handful of places to deliver their fuel in China, India, Turkey, a few other places. So I think we meet them at the delivery point, and then we hold those companies and countries accountable that receive it and pay for it.
So the change in policy, this is what General Keane told me this morning, what he said he would put on the table for Ukraine. Cut 17.
Well, I think he made a general statement. I don't know what the language was used with Steve Witkoff, but I think he made a general statement to the president when he was with him, dealing with security guarantees being reasonable, something we should discuss. But I think anybody knowing Putin, when you get into the details of this, that's something else again. So listen, it's a negotiated item for sure, but we should put it on the table what security guarantees Ukraine absolutely needs and what the United States should be providing as part of that multinational force Ukraine.
So he might be changing. I don't know if that's a negotiated area. I mean, he said, I believe the Lavrov said, we would like to be on the ground. So would the Chinese would like to be part of the international forces, which is a joke. I mean, we're going ahead. I think our allies are going ahead and planning to give us an idea of what that international force would be like, the rotations. And they're also looking, last time I saw it 2 days ago, they're asking the U.S. to station fighter jets in Romania. That's where I thought we were at. But then Lavrov goes out and says what he says.
No, you're right. Jack Keane has it exactly right. We're going to have to eventually have a multinational force that doesn't include Russian forces. Now, look, that's the reassurance force. There'll be a monitoring force along the line of contact that could include the Chinese. I don't think it has to, but it would include some Europeans, Chinese, some other countries. But that's a small monitoring force looking for violations. The reassurance force, 10,000 and 15,000 infantry and ground forces in Ukraine, that's going to need to be mostly British and French, since the Germans have already, taken an opt-out, a preemptive opt-out almost. And then the United States has to provide what General Keane was implying, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. We're the backbone of that. For decisions made over 25 years, we have ISR capability. We can provide that. We can provide logistics. And then he's right. I think we provide the backup air power. In other words, I think the NATO air policing up front are European countries, but the U.S. is flying just in the background to say, do not mess with that NATO air policing force.
I just don't know if they say all these conditions got to be worked out. I guess their demands satisfied before they get to a trilateral. So, Admiral, project where we're going to be at in a week.
In a week, we will not have resolved this. I think I'm going to Ukraine in October to do some training with them, and I fully suspect the war will be going on then. I don't think there'll be a ceasefire or any kind of agreement by mid to late October. This could easily, Putin's going to continue to push to see if he can get a military breakthrough. I think against all odds, he still considers that an option. And so from my perspective, this is going to keep going on. I think a week from now, the Russians will be spinning different things, but without a pressure campaign led by President Trump, because he's frustrated with President Putin, we're not going to get to real agreements.
What about the frozen funds of $300 billion? Where would that be on your hit list? That is Russian funds. I'd love to see that go right to Ukraine.
Yep. Me too. The problem here isn't Russia, it's Belgium. The vast majority of these funds somehow are sitting in Belgium, which causes me to ask a lot about Belgium's banking system. But we'll set that aside and just say, yeah, that needs to happen. The rest of Europe needs to bring pressure down on the French and the Belgians, who are the two countries kind of pushing back against using that money for this purposes. All they've been using is the interest spun off by the money. They haven't been using the core $300 billion.
So the president, I'm just going to paraphrase what he put on Truth Social. I was trying to find it. But he said, look, it's impossible for Ukraine to be able to win a war when they can't hit the country that attacked them. It's like having a great defense, but not being able to use your offense in football. So that's interesting, isn't it? So the president suddenly realizes, I don't think suddenly, but now he's saying it, that the problem is Kyiv can't hit Moscow, but Moscow can hit Kyiv. So knowing that and seeing this report that the Ukrainians have been working to develop its own long-range missile program. The status of the program has been shrouded in secrecy, and recently a new long-range cruise missile was being produced. That large-scale program was expected to be by the end of December of early next year. So they are innovative, they are resourceful, they're relentless, and they're smart. So that would be interesting if suddenly Moscow felt some of the pain that Ukraine is, or would that worry you about escalation?
So I'm glad this is a Ukrainian indigenous product, the Flamingo missile that's going out. It's about 1,000-pound warhead, I think, and it'll do some damage when they get through. Some will get shot down. So I'm glad they're developing that. And like I said, we provide ATACMS, which is more about the 400 kilometers around Kiev going into close Russia. It's about hitting military forces where they aggregate, logistics, command and control. So use U.S. ATACMS to hit that near area, and then their own indigenous stuff to hit Moscow and other strategic targets. And what I would say to Moscow is, you literally strike them with 500 to 600 weapons a night. Did you not think they were going to hit you back with these flamingos? So it can't be escalatory. By that definition, the escalation management has all been on the Russian side.
Right. I mean, I played the Russian defense minister say that, these NATO nations, they've had missiles hit Moldova multiple times, fall right by Romania's border, Poland's border. I mean, they are intentionally or unintentionally touching on the edge of NATO. Are they daring NATO to act? Did they want this when they can't handle Ukraine?
I can't simultaneously say that maybe the reason it lands in Moldova, Poland, and Romania is because it sucks. In other words, these are missiles that did not detonate and instead flew their course just to weapons exploration. I do not believe they were targeting those areas. Having said that, that lack of, Russia would never accept that from these countries. If they did a test firing in their country and it landed in Russia, they would become unglued, so I get it, but we play this kind of provocation. The problem with being a democracy is that, we we're logical and we're responsive and we don't escalate when someone makes an accident. Authoritarian states don't work that way. They take advantage of mistakes. They provoke and they escalate. So we just have to be careful with Putin. But look, these indigenous Ukrainian weapons, that's Ukraine's business, and Russia can stop it. They can stop their 500 cruise ballistic and drone missile attacks a night, and I imagine Ukraine would stop their handful of long-range Flamingo missiles.
So we have destroyers off the coast of Venezuela. I love that we're putting attention into Central and South America again. It looks like they've mobilized 4,500 troops. So Maduro, there's a $50 million bounty on his head. The Chinese have warned us to knock it off when it comes to Venezuela and recognize their sovereignty. So, Admiral Montgomery, how do you feel about this?
Well, first, I remember the Monroe Doctrine. I think China needs to cool its jets. But second, look, I like putting some maritime power down there. I wouldn't have put destroyers down there. Those were burning, President Trump has acknowledged, in fact, he has been a leading advocate that our Navy's getting, doesn't have enough airships and is getting burned out. I would have put a mix of what's called the littoral combat ship, much less crew. It is a ship that doesn't have a mission against China or Russia. I'd have put that, and they're stationed in Florida, in Jacksonville. I'd have put in Mayport. I'd have put them out against that. They don't look as cool, but they would serve the purpose, and they don't strike into Venezuela. But I don't really believe we're going to strike into Venezuela. I think we're going to cut off Venezuela's ability to push drugs, or Venezuelan cartels' ability to push drugs into our country. We've labeled their gangs foreign terrorist organizations. I think we should push that harder. We should be using the Coast Guard and smaller Navy ships. Having said that, the president's the president. He gets to put whatever ships he wants down there. These ships are a strong deterrent. The problem is the 4,000 Marines. We're not going to look. I love Marines. The 4,000 Marines would do a lot of damage in Venezuela, but they would not overrun Venezuela. And so I would have held off on that a little bit. But he's trying to make a demonstration of our commitment to the security of the hemisphere. And so these three ships are not the worst thing.
But Admiral, look what he did with the Panama Canal right away. And look at what happened in Bolivia. They're about to have a runoff between two conservative governments. They've been socialists for the last 20 years. Venezuela is the problem in the region that's helping foment so much of the unrest there. Welcomes in the Iranians, the Russians, the Chinese. That's why the Chinese are upset. They might lose an outpost.
Yeah. And, I'd be making sure Chevron's not doing any oil extraction in Venezuela right now. I would be cutting off all access to resources. And so this is how you do. I agree. We should hold Venezuela accountable. When we're done with that, we want to turn back and give Cuba a little bit of a slap because they're not that much better. But yeah, the Venezuelans are not a force for good. Maduro is a thug and an authoritarian who kills his jails and or kills his opponents, and including properly elected leaders that have had to flee the country and are in the United States right now. We need to support democracy in Venezuela. So I'm for this. And more broadly, you're right, support democracy in the region and make sure that crazy leftists are not elected in these countries, with Chinese influence operation campaigns, undergirding them.
And don't you believe, Admiral, that shutting down the border the way we did is really hurting the cartel's revenue because they were selling a ton of drugs here?
Yeah, I love this president's approach to homeland security. It's three things. It's shutting down the border, it's improving our cybersecurity, and it's missile defense. When you put all three of those together, every president since 9/11 said, my number one priority is homeland security. No president since 9/11 has actually put the resources into protecting all three of those areas. I see this president already strong in two of them. I'm sure the cyber one's coming with the new national cyber director. But the border, missile defense, cyber, we've got to protect our homeland. That is the actual number one mission of U.S. national security elements.
Admiral Mark Montgomery, thanks so much. Fascinating time. A lot of moving parts. We'll see where this goes. I'll check in again, Admiral. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
The punter is on the field for LSU. Hangs it. Had an opportunity for Perkins back there at about the 21-yard line. LSU wins the BCS National Championship. Nick Saban coming across the field. Shake hands with Bob Stoops.
Just like that, we had a champion and a great moment for Scott Cochran. He was the strength coach for that team. And Scott Cochran is now the West Alabama head football coach. And his journey there is truly noteworthy, and he's trying to spread what he's learned then and how he's been such an inspiration to so many. And his book is called Skull Session, Mastering the Mental Game in Sports, Work, and Life. Coach, welcome to the Brian Kilmeade Show.
Man, thank you so much for having me on, baby. Fired up to be here.
Well, for a change, you're not really fired up much in your life. I watched the special on you on ESPN, truly amazing. First off, the pressure you put on yourself, how much did that have to do with the problem you had a little bit later with drinking?
Yeah, I think it's all encompassing, right? I think, it started off with migraines because I yell a lot, and so the doctors, gave me oxycodone, and they said, hey, this is addictive. And at the time, I'm a strength coach. I'm, very successful. Everything's going great. And you're going to tell me I'm going to get addicted to a pill, right? So it's all encompassing. I think the stress, the yelling, all of it came in.
So the role of Nick Saban in your life?
Yes. I worked for him for 18 years. 18 years with Coach Saban. And man, what an honor and a privilege.
What did he see in you?
I think he saw somebody that cared about the players. I think he saw someone that could do exactly what he needed from a strength and conditioning and a mental development position.
And you produced for him. And for a team to be that successful, for a program to be that successful, everyone's got to work. But Scott, a lot of times strength coaches aren't football coaches. You just train. You could be a bodybuilder, whatever it is. You know strength, and you know what that sport needs. You're a football guy fundamentally, though, right? Who taught you the game?
JT Curtis, my high school coach. He's out of New Orleans, and he's probably one of the winningest. If he's not the winningest, he will be this season. High school coach in the country. But that's who I learned from, and obviously working for Coach Saban, that's really who I learned how to tweak and how to pay attention to the details.
So, considering all the success you've had at different programs, LSU, Alabama, Georgia, West Alabama is not the biggest program, but it's probably the most perfect program for you. Why?
It's perfect because they understand that I'm a man in recovery, number one. And number two, the location. My babies were born in Tuscaloosa, and I'm an hour from Tuscaloosa. So for me, it's great because I get to be around players, and that's where I thrive.
You know, it's interesting, Scott, too, on another level. It's going to be pretty rare if these guys go pro. So you really have to have the student athlete. And that plays to your strength, right? Then you're not going to have the prima donnas, no offense, that think they're bigger than the program. And if you yell at them, they're going to just transfer and going to go to the portal. You don't have that, do you?
No, I don't. This spring, I had 0 guys transfer. And I was trying to create spots.
And
so I was grateful for it, because they bought in. They bought into the program. That's one thing that is really cool around here is that the players love football, and that's so much fun to coach.
But do you think the strength of Scott Cochran now is you have balance? Because I also heard balance is overrated to some people, that you have to have focus. But do you have more of a balance than the strength coach at Alabama and LSU? Do you have more of a balance now as head coach?
Yes, very much so. Through my job, through my addiction, my family, took the brunt of it. They were what I call my hostages, and now.
What would you do? You'd come home and be sullen? Or would
I'd come home and be exhausted, or I'd have to get on the phone and talk to a player's mom or dad because the job just never ended. And I embraced it. I loved it, but I had no idea that my family, even though I was there, I really wasn't present for them.
So you wrote this book. It's about you, but you want to help other people, and not just people that took OxyContin and couldn't stop. What do you want to relay to somebody that never put on the eye black or the helmet that could benefit from talking to you and reading this book?
Yeah, I think everyone is trying to have success in their field, right? They're just trying to take one step to be great. And through my recovery, through all the character development we have done at LSU, Alabama, and Georgia, we had this program, and it was called Skull Sessions. So if you're trying to take your organization to another level, to kind of give it that edge, it's a step-by-step process. And along the way, you get to hear cool stories, and you get to hear about my downfall and how I'm able to brush it off and come right back.
And when people relate to you, you go, well, I had that story, but it was Wall Street. I had that story, but it was my own business. And my business failed, and I was destroyed. That was my self-esteem. So do they all fit to your Skull Session?
Yes, for sure. You can easily find a way, whether it's individually. I'm just better with organizations and teams. So if you're, a CEO and you're trying to get your company to take that next step, here's a simple plan that we used. And it's simple things like how to write your goals. Everybody has a plan and what they do to write their goals, but normally they write their goals down and they never see their goals again, right? So now we have a plan. We're going to put these goals on paper, on a mirror, on a Post-it,
right,
on your mirror, and you get to look at that every morning, every night. And I might be becoming that.
And what people say too, if you want to reach that goal, ask your question, why? You want to be rich? Why? Are you trying to prove something to somebody? Well, that's not going to work, because when you get there, you're not going to feel satisfied. So why do you want to be my middle linebacker? Why, I watched the Jerry Jones documentary. And yeah, he was captain of his football team, but he said that, he was not the best player, knew he wasn't going to be pro. You know what his senior thesis was? How to own a football team, and then how to market a football team. And even though he was drilling oil in the back of his head, he wanted to own a football team. That's the type of things that you get from Skull Sessions, right?
Yes, sir. Exactly right. And it's that little step. And the cool part is it's the same way in recovery. When you're down and out and you're trying to figure out, how do I get out of this hole, this pit that I've dug for myself? Because at the end of the day, you have no one to blame. So it's a very similar parallel. How do I write my goals? How do I talk to myself, right? What am I saying to myself?
So, Scott, here's the other thing. If winning is everything, you're telling a story that you hit bottom. So you're showing vulnerability. For a long time, I imagine Scott Cochran thought vulnerability was weakness. I better not show players any of that. How tough was that move?
That was, it was very freeing, to be able to surrender and say, you know what, I can't do this by myself, was really cool to see how many people jumped in the boat instead of kicking the boat to the side. They jumped in and they were like, okay, how can I help you? How can I help you? And it's amazing when you ask friends, when you ask family for help, how they respond, because it's the last thing you would ever think to do. I got this. I can handle it. I'm the guy that helps everybody. And then you ask for help yourself. And then all of a sudden an army shows up, And
that's great. And you could tell the other kids, you never know what people are going through. Did you find that most of the people were shocked? You mentioned Nick Saban was shocked, right? Yes. Were most people shocked outside your family?
Yeah, my wife was completely shocked. Had no idea. She knew I struggled really bad with migraines, but she also trusted the doctor that I went to. Little did she know that I stopped going to that doctor and found one that would write me different scripts. But she knew I had pain, but she had no idea that I had taken it to the level that I took it until I overdosed. And she found me overdosed.
And lastly, Scott Cochran, how's the team going to be this year?
Man, I hope we're going to be good.
Right.
That's the coolest thing about football is you always find out.
Right.
You find out if it works or if it doesn't.
Yes, and you hope it does. And I feel like you're going into it with that feeling of optimism. Scott Cochran, thanks so much. Congratulations on Skull Session and your life. Strength. Yes. You're the strength and conditioning coach, but now head coach over 2 decades. And the book is called Mastering the Mental Game in Sports, Work, and Life. Scott, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me on.
You got it.